Hey guys, how's everyone doing? This is Sir Jedi Sentinel, and welcome back to Sentinel Reviews. Today, our look at Doctor Who Series 14/Season 1 continues with Episode 6, Rogue, written by Kate Herron and Bryony Redmond. The only new writers this season. But I already said my piece about that last episode. As always, there is a blanket spoiler warning in place because I do these unscripted and may decide to talk about spoilers. If you do not wish to be spoiled, now is your one chance to pause the video, jump ship, go watch the episode in question, and then come back and resume this video. And before I get into the episode itself, if you didn't read the description below, let me open with it. Rogue is not the best episode of the season. It's good, don't get me wrong. It's not the best, but it is an episode this season desperately needed. I'm gonna paraphrase Council of Geeks here, and she a little while ago she put out a video talking about how eight episodes for the season of Doctor Who simply isn't enough. Either link in the annotation above or in a pinned comment below. I just want to cite my source on this because watching this episode, I found a lot of the things she said in that video I am in agreement with. For further context, she recorded that video around the release of 73 Yards, and then she released it around the release of Dot and Bubble. So at the time of recording this, Sunday, June 9th, she has not put out a review for Rogue yet, so I don't know if her thoughts will line up with that other video she put out, but just know that is the source I'm citing, that I am paraphrasing because I'm in agreement with it, and I recommend you check out that video anyway because she says it so much more eloquently than I am going to here. So as I said, Rogue is an episode this season desperately needed. Simply put, it's a filler episode, and I know lately filler has become such a dirty word, mostly because it's been co-opted by hate merchants and rage mongers who tack it onto anything they don't like without knowing what it actually means. Kind of like they do with Mary Sue. But filler does have a purpose in shows, in seasons of shows, especially in longer seasons, like back when seasons were 20 to 24 episodes. To the best of my knowledge, it's a little tricky to define. Filler was any episode that essentially exists in isolation. So for example, if your season had an overarching plot or narrative to it, filler would be the episodes that don't play into that overarching narrative. And yes, filler episodes do also exist in more episodic stuff, but that's getting into the weeds. And again, I didn't do proper research on this, but like the point I'm getting to is that filler did serve an important purpose though. Like it was kind of meant to be breathing room to kind of, after like big episodes, big plot stuff, big events, filler would kind of help you decompress from what you experienced. It was kind of meant for you to take a breath and relax so you can go into the plot next time prepared and ready to handle it. Filler also has the qualitative function of making the extraordinary episodes stand out even more. I think that's been one of my issues with this season in particular. Just every episode has been doing something big. And, whether it's Boom with the Doctor stuck on a landmine and having to resolve an entire situation in one spot, 73 Yards being a Dr. Light episode, Dot and Bubble following essentially a major side character while the Doctor and Ruby are trapped on the outside, further leading into the allegory of that episode. If we had more episodes, if we had filler episodes, those episodes would seem even more extraordinary than they are. As it is, it's just a strong string of episodes. And in fact, if it were me, I would actually move this episode in between one of those to try and break them up a little bit. Which does lead me to the third thing that I'm going to be citing again from that video. Filler helps set a status quo. Like, Again, going from fighting gods to a Dr. Light episode with Ruby essentially in a time loop to an episode where we barely see the Doctor and Ruby because, again, they're stuck on the outside trying to find a way in to help. We have no idea what the status quo with the Doctor and Ruby is at this point. You know, the only other episode we had like Rogue was Space Babies, because every other episode was just a big event after a big event. You know, and that's kind of where my thoughts and my agreements with Council of Geeks end. Again, annotation or pinned comment below with the link. Go check out that video. She is much more eloquent and enunciated than I ever am if you've seen my videos. But now into my own personal thoughts. Like I said, Rogue is a good episode. It's not one of the best. And unfortunately, there is stuff I am noticing about this season overall. It's not Rogue's fault, but there are things that are starting to come to light about this season that I just now noticed in this episode. So what is the plot of Rogue? Rogue is our season requisite historical episode. The Doctor and Ruby go into the past, you know, around, I couldn't even say which era, so I'm not going to try to, but you know, a lot of the era of high society where that was a thing, you know, and a lot of parties being thrown. God, I wish I remembered the era. Basically, specifically, what gets cited is Bridgerton. This episode is playing a lot on the series Bridgerton. And while they're there, the Doctor realizes that they are in the presence of the Choldor, alien shapeshifters who are sort of who have a mysterious, menacing scheme of their own. And he has to team up with a bounty hunter named Rogue, played by Jonathan Groff, to resolve it. This, I honestly think, is Ncuti Gatwa's weakest performance this season. Not bad, it's just previously he has given such stellar performances that just by comparison, while still great, this one isn't as good. And, you know, similarly, Jonathan Groff is also amazing as Rogue. I do hope, given how this episode ends, we'll see more of him in the future. I know a lot of fans, you know, in comparing this to RTD1, were comparing Rogue to Captain Jack Harkness. In fact, a lot of people said he was Captain Jack recast. Really thankful he's not, because, you know, it's Jonathan Groff, give him his own character. But I can see where the comparisons are. Real quick, let's just get this out of the way because a lot of people are talking about it. There is a scene where, of course, Rogue mistakes the Doctor for the Choldor, and the Doctor basically has to reveal who he is to, you know, exonerate himself, and he has Rogue's scanner show him various holographic images of his other incarnations. One of them is the Schalke Doctor, Richard E. Grant. I just wanted to comment on it so someone didn't, well, actually me in the comments. This is a big thing people are going nuts over, even though the clip itself is under 20 seconds. And I'm just going to say this, it's not a big deal. Like Russell T. Davies, either behind the scenes in an interview or something, or in the episode itself, would have let people know this was going to be a big deal. And he's really good about that. You know, he's obviously not going to reveal big twists and turns, but he is very good about letting you know what's going on. Like he has said prior to this, Jonathan Groff is not Captain Jack. He has said the Daleks and the Master will be taking a break. He has given no indication that the Schalke Doctor is a big deal, so I'm not going to make a big deal out of it. It's there, and that's fine. I will say throughout this episode, I did find the chemistry between Ncuti Gatwa and Jonathan Groff a little flat. It gets better as the episode plays out by the end, but towards the beginning, them just being together feels so forced. Like I said, for most of the episode, it falls flat, but then when they realize what the Choldor are doing and kind of try to find a way to draw them out, it starts getting much better. Speaking of the Choldor, this was not intentional. The way the episode plays out, this was clearly not intentional, but I can't help but feel that the writers are making some very derogatory remarks about cosplay, because that's what they constantly describe the Choldor as doing. They are evil alien cosplayers. They want to live up the melodrama and the scandal of it all, and use that to create their own scandals and eventually destroy the world. As someone who dabbles and has dabbled in the past in cosplay, I can't help but find what this episode is saying kind of insulting. In terms of performances too, Millie Gibson is really good. She is paired off with one of the other side characters. She's clearly having a ball, and Ruby is having fun involved in this entire event. Also, finally, we get a scene with Carla where she's not being a terrible person. Thank you. We get a flashback, presumably after the events of Space Babies, where after the Doctor and Ruby's first adventure in Church on Ruby Road, and then Space Babies happens immediately after, and then that episode ends with the Doctor returning Ruby home to Carla and Cherry. We get this flashback scene, this wonderful flashback of Carla asking the Doctor to take care of Ruby. It's a really good, touching scene. Now let's get into this episode's problems. Well, this quote-unquote episode's problems. Like I said, it's something I've been noticing with this season overall, and this episode is just where I finally started noticing those things in particular. First, the Doctor and Ruby. We've been getting less and less of them as a pair as this series has gone on. Like I said, in the Church on Ruby Road and Space Babies, two of the worst episodes of this season, the saving grace was the chemistry between Ncuti Gatwa and Millie Gibson, and those episodes really established a very strong dynamic between the Doctor and Ruby. But then, as the series has gone on, we have been getting less and less of that dynamic. We've had the Doctor or Ruby, or the Doctor and Ruby. We have not been getting the Doctor and Ruby, if that makes sense. Like Boom, there was a little bit of it, but then there was a huge portion of the middle where Ruby gets knocked out. 73 Yards is a Doctor Light episode. Dot and Bubble is not quite Doctor Light, it's Doctor adjacent, but again, because we're following Lindy, we don't get much of the Doctor and Ruby. And here in Rogue, the Doctor is off with Rogue and Ruby is off doing her own thing. It's like, because in those first two episodes, RTD spent so much time establishing the Doctor and Ruby's dynamic. Now it feels like, okay, it's established, so they don't need to be together anymore. Let me put it like this. It feels like after the way they were established and introduced and set up, it feels like their bond is now devolving. We are seeing less and less of them as a pair, as a dynamic. They're off doing their own things, and it's all the weaker for it, because again, Ncuti Gatwa and Millie Gibson have such great chemistry. They play off each other really well, and the Doctor and Ruby's bond and their dynamic was a highlight of their early episodes. It feels like we're not getting that anymore. And let's talk about the other big thing I noticed, the way the season is going, and the way it's presumably gonna go based on the previews. So let's go back to the 60th, and one of my big issues with that, the bi-generation. After bi-generating, RTD makes it very clear the 14th Doctor is retiring so he can get the therapy and the help he so very clearly needs, And Ncuti Gatwa, the 15th Doctor, basically exists post-therapy. He is the Doctor after getting the help he needs. There is even that line in The Giggle where Time Lords were doing therapy out of order. Because we've kind of noticed, New Who really likes to dump all this trauma on the Doctor, constantly make them go through these terrible events and have it just weigh on their conscience all the time. So, it's like the Doctor is finally, with the Bigeneration, the 14th Doctor is finally getting a chance to rest, in part because the 15th Doctor is still out there saving the universe. And the 15th Doctor is obviously the Doctor post that rest and therapy he's needed. Because all of this also took off screen because RTD used the Bigeneration to cop out of a very interesting character arc. So, and too, similarly, because the Doctor no longer has that trauma weighing on them, it's allowed Gatwa, in terms of characterization, to be the closest Doctor, again, in terms of characterization, that the revival has had to the classic Doctors. Well, second closest after Jodie Whittaker. Excuse me. And then just in the last few episodes, and again, looking like what's going to happen in the finale, it looks like Russell T Davies is just pouring trauma on the Doctor again, between white supremacists refusing to save themselves, even while the Doctor begs for them to let him save them in Dot and Bubble, versus Ruby's fake out death in Rogue and Rogue's sacrifice at the end of the episode. Like, having gone through, again, this off-screen arc, because, again, Russell T Davies copped out, where the Doctor has gotten healing, and just to, again, start dumping all this trauma on the Doctor again, it kind of invalidates everything you did, Russell. Like, you went through all this stuff to say the Doctor needs help and healing, and you went through all of this in the least interesting way possible to say he got that help and healing. So now I'm going to do it all to him again. It kind of invalidates the entire story arc you set up with the 14th Doctor. So yeah, I don't really have anything else to say. Well, certainly nothing that hasn't already been said. Rogue is fine. Again, it's a filler episode, and this season desperately needed a filler episode. Gatwa is okay. Jonathan Groff is the show stealer. Their chemistry is a little flat. Unfortunately, it's only really brought down because I noticed some of the issues I've had with this season, I was finally able to put into words here. But those are just my thoughts. Have you seen Rogue? What are yours? Start a conversation in the comments below. And remember to like, comment, subscribe. Click the bell next to subscribe to get notifications when I upload. And in the description box below, you'll find the link to my socials where you can follow me and get updates on the channel. This is Sir Jedi Sentinel, and I'll see you guys next time for part 1 of this season's 2-part finale. Oh boy.